guys remember when I talked about The Forest, an immersive open-world indie game with an unnerving plot and terrifying enemies, vast caves full of exploration, and a secluded island covered in mystery. Whenever I think back on great survival games, The Forest is always first in my mind. The graphics are nice, the gameplay can be a downright fantastic time, especially with friends. There is so much to do and focus on when you're running through the cannibal-infested forest. But what if I had said it took a long time for The Forest to get to this point? Believe it or not, when the game first released, it was very bare bones and didn't even offer a storyline yet. There were also no cannibals in the original, as far to my knowledge. Sometimes we've seen examples like this one where a game takes a long amount of time to finally become well received, if not played more often. No Man's Sky was very similar, offering nothing that was sponsored during the overhyped announcements, but within time, the game did eventually start to get better with each update, and now it's often held as one of the greatest games of its genre. Among successful games like The Forest, I was keen on checking out other titles that had appeared to be decent clones, or at the very least, decent games. I was staying at my cousin Dustin's house when I discovered this game in the PlayStation Store, known as Stranded Deep. You might remember it as one of the biggest survival games to be announced for an indie company. Much like the film Castaway, Stranded Deep takes place in the life of an airplane crash survivor who is lost at sea. Your goal is to survive, or die trying. You're given a pretty basic set of tools for survival, but everything else you'll have to craft for yourself. The graphics aren't too bad, the landscape looks nice, and the game definitely has atmosphere with the peaceful music and the sounds of the ocean. The first-person perspective is nice. I always value the ability to look down and see your own body in these types of games. The first thing you're instructed to do is craft the essentials by harvesting the resources on the starting island. It took me a bit of time to get used to it, but I eventually got the hang of navigating the awfully designed menus. The tutorial says to hold C to access the crafting menu, but holding C just opens up the quick crafting menu. You have to tap C in order to open up the real crafting menu. I also didn't know how to drop items for a little bit until my pinky accidentally hit the Q key, and yeah, that's how you do it. For some basic essentials right off the bat, you can cut down some coconuts and drink them to conserve your thirst a bit longer. Things like sprinting, jumping, fighting, and rowing the boat will drain your maximum stamina, causing you to overheat if you do them long enough. As far to my knowledge, there's no map of this game, just the open water and plenty of exploration for the player to get excited over. At least, that's what I thought at first. Unlike The Forest, Stranded Deep doesn't have any sort of lore. Besides the beginning cutscene, we're given no further context other than to survive on our own. It's kind of disappointing to me in a way. I feel like it's fair to expect there to be some sort of secret storyline covering the strange islands. I'm not saying there has to be cannibals, but maybe some strange phenomena that occurs and warps the way the player plays the game. Like, I don't know, imagine there's dehydration effects, like you hallucinate, you see rainbows or mermaids or some crazy shit. But no, it's actually really mundane, offering pretty much what you would expect in a survival game. The starting island is always a small island, prompting exploration to larger, more rewarding islands. According to Google, after meeting definite requirements, you'll complete the game's story and see the end game. As you explore the many uninhabited islands, sooner or later you will know how to complete the game. Whatever that means, I guess we have a lot of exploration to do. Starting off at this next island over, I discovered a giant crab. Hell yeah, that looks like dinner. Oh, fuck, he's stronger than a bowl of nails for breakfast without any milk. Jesus, why the hell are they all so tough? You'd think I would be strong enough to drive this knife directly into the crab's skull, but no, I'm stuck with this pathetic swing. There's no strategy, as always. With the combat in this game, you just have to swing at your enemy and hope you kill it first. Thankfully I did. Better check on my health. What? I'm almost dead? Well, fuck that, I'm never gonna fight a crab again, plain and simple. Riding out on the life raft during a storm isn't recommended, as it could probably lead to you tipping it upside down and risk dying a painful death. You can drag the raft onto land by right-clicking with the mouse, which is essential, otherwise it'll sail away from you never to return again, and you don't want to swim everywhere. But the raft, as convenient as it is still pretty slow. Trekking across open water takes time, so I guess you better be ready for some small boring moments of gameplay where you're just paddling to and from. Or you can accidentally get into a fight with some of these assholes. Ah, fuck, leave me alone, you stupid crabs. From what I've read online, I will eventually find out what my goal is the more islands I visit. I discovered these vehicle parts. Ooh, that's fancy. So what then? My goal is to make a boat or something? Okay, that's not a bad idea, but look at this crap. The inventory management is so beyond confusing. You're given a backpack but can only hold a certain amount of items in a certain quantity. In a good game like The Forest, your items all stack up to a certain degree, giving you loads of freedom and creative options with crafting. There's no weight mechanic either, which isn't necessarily realistic, but it's done extremely well there. I can't find a good way to explain it other than this. In Stranded Deep, you don't have the controls or tips on the inventory screen. You can only drop items when you have them equipped in your hands. Sometimes you're not allowed to equip other items in your inventory if your inventory is full. That doesn't make any sense. If I had room for my refined axe but equipped it, I should still have room in my bag to put it back if I want, but no, you're not allowed to do that. I also crafted a tool belt along with a pouch attachment, but for some reason I can't hotkey them into my quick slots. I've tried mashing the buttons, clicking and dragging, looking at the controls, and I just can't find a way to do it. So I have to gratuitously open my inventory and switch my tool or weapon every 5 seconds. I did manage to find two very useful items, the flashlight and the lantern. The lantern is extremely handy because it has an infinite usage, while the flashlight is good for lighting up dark areas. Or at least it would be if my main character didn't have a posture disorder. Why is the beam pointed up? Shouldn't it be pointed towards the center, right out in fucking front of me? Even worse, you can't attach the flashlight to your belt for the convenience of using a different weapon or tool while being able to see in the dark. It's one or the other, because, you know, we only have two fucking hands. Another slight pet peeve of mine, in order to save any of your progress, you have to build a shelter. The option in the main menu is gray with the tiny caption underneath, "You must be near or at a shelter to save." So why do they have this option here labeled in the menu if you can't even fucking use it? Is it to tease me? Building a shelter takes a bit of time too, unless you can craft some useful materials early on. I got lucky and found leather along with some sticks and fashioned a fancy axe together that will help me cut down trees faster and more efficiently. I was able to make a somewhat decent starting camp, but the experience itself feels mediocre. In order to gain access to other recipes and useful materials, you have to explore the unexplored, expanded landscape of the ocean. It takes so long to navigate using the life raft, but it's the best starting option. Swimming is good for one thing, getting your ass eaten by sharks. I will admit, it is kind of neat to incorporate the shipwrecks with the hidden loot caches left behind on them. Containing things like crafting supplies and even flare guns, these rusted hunks of junk serve as nothing more than scenery. There's no lore or semblance of storyline involved with them, like you don't find written notes or anything. I feel kinda let down about that. Plus, lots of the shipwrecks are just copy-paste assets with little to no variation, which can really mess with you if you're trying to navigate and rely on landmarks to guide you. You can't say something, for example, like, "Oh, that's the island with the crashed boats," because there's fucking 5 islands that match that description alone. As far to my knowledge, there's also no map, like I said before. How the fuck am I expected to survive if I don't know where I'm going or where I've been? Well, that's what the compass is for, which is located in the life raft bag. I guess this is okay, but what good is it gonna do me if I don't have a good layout of the land itself? As I mentioned before, paddling the raft is tedious. I understand it's meant to be a real human being, and you probably wouldn't even be paddling at this rate in reality, but this is a video game. At least offer the option to upgrade the paddle somehow. Otherwise, I feel like the islands are way too spaced out. The combat exists simply to make the player angry. At least that's the effect it had on me, because the hit registration is junk. You have to be spot on in order to hit your target, and the only way you can sense if you're damaging an enemy is by a very subtle sound effect. There's no visual effects that indicate I am in fact hitting the fucking crab. It looks like I'm getting my ass kicked, and honestly I am, but if you could experience it the way I am, you'd know that I am in fact hitting the damn thing. And how does a single crab bring my health this far down? Can you imagine in real life being stranded on a hot, blazing beach with no food or water and you get murdered by a fucking crab of all things? Ooh, is that a piglet? Come here, you little fucklet. I'm gonna eat you for dinner. Never mind. Hunting in this game is a joke. I'm sure there's an easier way of catching food for you to cook, like using a bow and arrow, for example. But look at this. I chased this goddamn boar caveman style for 10 straight minutes before I finally killed it. This tiny boar sure has a lot of resources in it. Jesus. Man, sometimes you'll just be cutting down a tree minding your business when suddenly a fucking massive crab comes out of nowhere and attacks you. I don't mean to keep commenting on this same subject, but I don't even think real life crabs are this violent. Has anyone ever died to a fucking crab? Believe it or not, they have. According to the team of researchers who found a fractured skull attributed to Amelia Earhart on the Nukumararo Islands, the victim was bludgeoned to death by a dangerous group of vicious coconut crabs. It's said that she was torn apart and feasted upon. Don't know how accurate that is, but little piece of trivia for you. Trivia is better than what this piece of garbage is offering, though. It's so boring, and I keep doing the exact same mundane things over and over, hoping that it'll break the cycle of dullness, but it never does. In the forest, building something like a massive treehouse is impressive and feels rewarding when it's finished. You explore your new territory, set up defenses, overall enjoy looking back on all the hard work and time you spent on creating it. Here, it's such a massive chore to build anything. Never mind the fact that rare resources are harder to find, for obvious reasons, the crafting menu itself is a burden to the player. Having to scroll up and down constantly just to find what it is you wish to craft. Keep in mind, the game doesn't pause or anything when you're in the crafting menu, so you'd better take a good look around before you decide to make something, otherwise a fucking crab could come up and kill you. And with the ridiculously small inventory, it only makes it worse when you can't craft something specific just because you can't hold the item you need to craft it. Instead, you're forced to sometimes place it on the ground and then pick it up. Stupid fucking dumb game. If you were expecting me to play all the way through this and complete the so-called storyline, I hate to let you down, but this is definitely not worth my time or my money. I'm aware there are bosses within the game that you can discover and fight, but I didn't manage to find a single thing. There are 3 bosses in the game, and each can be found in randomized sections of the map. On the cartographer screen, they are characterized by the red skull icons. The bosses are known as the Meg, the Great Abaya, and Lucia the Great. Well, I can't even win a simple fight against a land crab, so my chances against the Megalodon probably aren't much better. Don't get me wrong, it's an ambitious take on the overall survival genre, but it doesn't offer much of what I'd been expecting at this point. Do you guys remember that game Raft, the one that was incomplete for a long time? Well, when they finally finished it, I took a gander at it out of curiosity, and it looks like a totally different game now. Stranded Deep looks the same as it did when it released, and it feels just about as broken and clunky. I mean, are my eyes deceiving me right now? Look, the fish are clipping out of the water. And when I was hunting the boar earlier, he started to take lift off. Jesus, I guess I've finally found a game where pigs fly. The graphics are nice, they're not the worst thing about the experience, but offer very awkward visuals at times, and the view model itself seems to be cursed. I mean, come on, this fucking flashlight. Nobody holds a flashlight like this. Oh look, another boar. This one is giant, so that means there's no fucking around. He kicked my ass in more ways than one, and I have no clue if I dealt any damage to him. Your best bet is to play the peaceful route and survive off of nothing but small fish and coconuts for the rest of your life. I managed to make it to day 3 before I let the boredom overcome my experience. The game is not at all up to par with other titles in this genre. I know the dev team is probably a small group. They certainly did all they could to bring Stranded Deep up high on the Steam player count, but there's a lot more of it that feels missing the more you play. How cool would it be to discover underwater treasure chests full of strange items, or like underwater plane wreckages, stuff that you don't always see every day? How about abandoned submarines and underwater buildings? Get creative with the idea. Don't limit us to a Kevin Costner Waterworld situation where the player is heavily reliant on the ocean's waves to get by. The islands are all different but feel the exact same. Some resources are straight up impossible to find unless you venture deep out in the tides and climb aboard a rusted boat. The crafting items feel limited in terms of what you can build, requiring you to be a certain level in order to craft higher tiered items. But the leveling mechanic is useless because there's no incentive to do more. You don't unlock new recipes or have a skill tree with points. You just get a plain text screen, and you gain access to other stuff you can build, such as, I don't know, a tanning rack. Hooray. Needless to say, it's for sure my least favorite survival game ever. Not necessarily because it made me mad a few times, but because it just straight up bored me. I could play the forest for 3 hours with no problem, but I can't do the same with Stranded Deep. It seems as though they had a great concept, but didn't utilize everything they could have to make it an authentic, immersive survival experience. The combat is laughably bad, paddling the raft is tedious and dumb, the storyline is basically non-existent, the crafting system is a burden, and the game doesn't feel rewarding to play. Honestly, I was expecting to find something great hidden deep within the universe that surrounds it, but the only thing Stranded Deep about this game is any sort of fun factor. You guys be the judge. If you feel like tossing a few bucks to the developer, go ahead. I was able to play it for free thanks to Brian, so I don't have to worry about getting a refund or losing my money. Hopefully you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching the video, ladies and gents. Leave a like, comment, and as always, enjoy yourself. Hopefully you stick around.